All right. Hello and welcome everybody to this Fusion for Business Users Skills Kickstart. My name is Lori Hamill and I'll be facilitating this session today. Our presenter is Jossie Ironcloud and we're going to get started in just a moment. I want to give the other attendees a minute to arrive. In the meantime, please be aware that we would love to see your questions coming in throughout the presentation. So down at the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A or a chat feature, and I'll be monitoring both of those. So go ahead and drop those in as any questions or comments may arise during the session, and we will get them taken care of. But there should also be a little bit of time at the end for it. All right. So again, we're just going to give the other attendees a minute to arrive. All right, it is 2 minutes past the hour, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Looks like we have a quorum on attendees. And, hello and welcome to anybody who just joined. Jossie Ironcloud is going to be your presenter for this Fusion for Business Users session, and please drop your questions in chat or Q&A. All right, go ahead and let's rip it.
Thanks, Lori. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fusion for Business Users. Like Lori said, my name is Jocelyn Ironcloud. I am a customer enablement specialist here at Encompass. I spent the first good chunk of my time here on our CRM support team, so I worked with Fusion quite a bit. So I'm pretty excited to talk to you about it today. And let's kind of talk about what about Fusion we're going to talk about, because if you've ever worked in Fusion, you know it's this massive report builder, right? I only have an hour to spend with you today, unfortunately, so we're not going to get into a huge deep dive of all the technical things kind of happening in the background of Fusion. What we're going to focus on today is how to use existing reports or report library reports and make modifications to them instead of building from scratch. We have these other two levels at Encompass that we offer, which is our level 1 introductory report builder and then level 2 advanced report builder. These are both certifications that we offer, and they are 12 hours total for each of them. So I don't have that much time to spend with you today. So we're going to start with the basics. Hopefully that'll give you a really good foundation to go into those certifications or to just use the tools you have available to you with our existing reports. So we're going to start with what is Fusion reporting, talk about our report library a little bit. We'll talk about our quick edit tools that are available for you in Fusion. And we'll spend most of our time in a demo today actually using those different tools. Like Lori said, we'll save a little bit of time at the end for questions, but go ahead and throw them in while I'm talking too. So starting out, what is Fusion? Fusion is a web-based platform that we use to build reports. It uses SQL queries to generate those reports. So we're creating essentially custom SQL queries in the background to create those reports. Now, the difference with Fusion is it's not a specific report. So like our other reports in Encompass, like our comparison sales report or your accounts receivable reports, those are all specific reports, whereas Fusion is a blank slate. You are setting all of the parameters with it, all of the fields you want to see, the filters, the tables. It is a complete blank slate. It's just where we build the reports. It's not a report itself. So they're a little bit different. Okay. So Fusion has several building blocks that kind of make up what's happening in the background. Again, we're not going to do a super deep dive into these because that really goes into our Fusion 1 content where we get a really closer look at all of these different elements, but we're going to brush up on them just a little bit today so you understand what's happening. And our first one we're going to talk about is joins. Joins are a way to link different data sets together. And usually what's happening in Fusion is we're linking different tables together or different reports together based on a common field. So say we're matching the customers table to the invoices table. We're looking for something in common on both of those, matching on that field, and we create one big data set with both of those tables. Our next one is group bys. Group bys are a way for us to organize the data in our report. These are what you may see in comparison as our parent-child in detail. Same thing in Fusion, just how we organize our data. Our next one is aggregates. This is also known as values. These are also in comparison as well, that you'll see those values on the right-hand side. Same kind of concept. These are where we have usually those numeric results for your report. So things like the sum of num units, or the average sale, or count of number of stops, different things that we're aggregating together, multiple different data points into one single value. Next is expressions. So if you're familiar at all with Fusion, this is typically why we use Fusion, is to do these advanced calculations with expressions. These give you some advanced logic to be able to use some SQL functions in the background to do something a little bit more advanced than you could do with, say, comparison or any of our other existing reports. And then our last one, of course, filters. These work just like anywhere else in Encompass, like on tables or comparison reports. You're just limiting the data that comes into your report. Nothing super fancy going on there. But this is kind of how they're laid out in our Fusion edit screen. So at the top in yellow here, we have our joins. Again, this is where we're taking two different data sets, either a report or a table, and joining them together on a common field. So if we take a look at the top here, we can see an invoice trans table, and we've joined in the products table here on a common field. And the way I can read this is looking across the row here. I've got a field column and a reference field, and these are going to be our matching fields. So I can see that we join the invoice trans table to the products table with that common field product ID. Our next one is group bys. So again, that's going to be our parent-child detail and columns. Columns is a special type of group by, and that's in those green boxes here. So those are going to be how we organize kind of the data we want to bring into our report. Then we have our aggregates, excuse me, or our values. So those numeric results that we want to see, or our calculations. Filters at the bottom in blue. We have some just like basic sales filters down here, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And then a date filter here as well. And then our expressions, anywhere you see this little FX icon highlighted in black, this is an expression. If it's grayed out like this, that is not an expression. That's just a regular old table field. Okay, so like I said, we're not going to be necessarily building anything from scratch today. We don't have enough time for that, unfortunately. So we're going to use our report library to kind of look at all of the different options you have to edit. And our report library, if you haven't been in there, is a collection of pre-built Encompass reports that we have found are the most helpful for things from anything from sales reports to operations reports in your warehouse to AR and financial reports. There's a huge range of things that you can get in there. And what these are is we've created these reports to monitor trends, and we add to this often. So if you're seeing something that you think might be helpful for all of our Encompass customers, we do add reports to these. So let us know if you're seeing or not seeing something that you think would be beneficial for everyone. But the best thing about the report library when you're trying to start working with Fusion is that it serves as a really good starting point to make some small modifications. So those small modifications are done with our quick edit tools. And there's several of them, and we're going to go through each one and kind of what they all do. But if you've ever worked in Fusion, you know that it's really difficult and error prone. You have to be really aware of exactly what everything is doing, or you can easily get errors and your report won't run. These quick edit tools make it really easy for you to go in, make changes to what you're seeing on the report without actually changing the underlying structure of the report. Let's talk about all of the ones we have. Our first one is the layout tool. And you'll see on the left-hand side when we open up our Fusion report here in just a bit, that there are tabs across the left-hand side of the Fusion view screen. So when you're actually looking at the report, where you can make these modifications. And the first tab here is the layout tab. This one lets you modify not necessarily the underlying structure of the report, but what you're seeing on the report for things like your group bys, your values, and your columns. So here you can change the parent, child, and detail, that value section where you're getting your numeric results, and you can add in any like comparisons if you want to compare last year to this year without actually changing what is going on underlying in the report. Next is our filters tab. This is going to bring in any of your filters on the Fusion edit screen that are pinned, and I'll show you what that means here in just a bit. But you can pull in any filters that are available to you and apply them right there from the Fusion view screen, instead of having to go into that edit screen and add those filters like you would with, say, like comparison, where you have to go to the edit screen, go find the filter, then set it, then run your report again. You can do that right from the report view screen with these pinned filters. The next tab down is our graphs. So this just lets you add a visual to your report. We have a lot of different graphs that you can add, anything like our pie graph that we see here, bar graphs. We have some number cards, which we'll see today, a lot of different options for you. And each of them are going to have their own settings. So things like changing the theme of them if you want different colors, or changing how the numbers display on there. Instead of having them inside the pie graph, I could have them outside the pie graph. Lots of different settings for them. Each one is going to have their own specific settings for them as well. And then our last tab on the left-hand side is the settings tab. This has a wide range of things for you to do in here, anything from printing to actually changing how things are brought into the report. So we'll go through most of these once we open the Fusion report we're going to look at today, but obviously the main one on here is our printing. If you want to print that report, this is where you do that from that settings tab. You get some print settings in there too. So if you want to add grid lines to how it prints or add page breaks, you can do that here. And then again, we have some display settings in here. So we can add column totals from this tab, which we'll see what those are here in just a bit. We can choose where we want to display the grand total of the report and a bunch of other options on here, and we'll go through all of them. Now, this one isn't necessarily a quick edit tool, but it is something nice to know about. Our drill down option, which is available in most of our reports in Encompass, if you click on a cell in that report, you can get these little options here to basically create like a mini report. So here I've clicked on a supplier, and then I've clicked in that drop down supplier name, salesman name, and I get this little mini report here that breaks down the supplier's total by salesman. So these are called drill downs. And the way that we make these available, this list we see here, is by the additional group buys in the Fusion edit screen. If we have a little bit of time, I'll show you how we can add those or see what's available to us, but that's where those come from. So this is a nice little tool here. If you don't want to have like a massive report, but you want the ability to kind of dig a little bit deeper, these drill downs are really nice to be able to create those little mini reports. And then, of course, saving your reports. These work kind of similar to comparison, where you get this little pop-up here that has you give your report a name. You can set a category on it, which groups your reports together on your saved reports dashboard. But it also has some other functionality when you create a category where you can schedule those reports out to send. We're not going to go through that today just for the sake of time. There is a help resource out there if you're curious about how to do that. So then once you save your report, it just shows up right there in that saved reports dashboard in the category that you selected, or if you didn't pick one, it would go into your general category. And then from here, you can run and edit that report from exactly how you saved it when you saved it. All right, so we're going to spend the majority of our time in a demo so you can actually see how these things work. And this is kind of what we're going to do today. So my manager reached out to me wanting to see a report. Oops. Sorry about that. And they want to see a ranked report for the top 10 brands our Walmart chains are buying year to date. okay? She had some specific requests about what she wants to see on that report, and these are what we're trying to build in here. She wants to see what package of those top 10 brands they're primarily purchasing. She wants to see a case total for each brand and a dollar volume total for each brand. She wants a year-to-date comparison. So I want to see all those top 10 brands from this year compared to last year. And then some sort of visual on that report. So she doesn't necessarily have to read through all of the different rows of it. She can see it at a quick glance at the top. Okay, we're going to keep coming back to this so we can keep looking at our requirements, but we're going to jump into an Encompass site here. And this is a lot of requirements for me to go through. And if I was building this from scratch, this would take me quite a bit of time. But the nice thing is in the report library, I have a lot of options. So there's two ways that I can get there. Like with anything else in Encompass, I can use the universal search bar here and search for a report library. Or on the left-hand side in your little menu here, you can go to the reporting tab. I have a ton of options here. There we go. And find it in here as well. Here's my report library. Okay, so and I'm actually going to go to a different site here. And we'll go to the report library. All right, so I know the requirements that I have in mind. And when I come into the report library, I'm looking for something that's going to get me at least close to what I need as my end goal. So across the top here, I've got a bunch of different categories. I've got my common reports, which are things that we see people use most commonly. We've got our sales category, some production reports if you're a production customer, operations, AR, financial, HR, lots of different categories that you can go through. I know the report that I'm building is a sales report because we're looking at top 10 brands. So I'm going to come into the sales report category here. And if I scroll through, I have a bunch of other like kind of mini categories inside of here. So I've got everything from geographic sales to pricing reports, placements, some distribution reports in here. There's a lot of options for me, and this is kind of a lot for me to look through. So the really nice thing about the report library is we have this search bar at the top. And what you can do with this is put in keywords of something that you're looking for and get you some results that match that. So I know I'm looking for a top brands report. So if I just type top brand, I get 4 reports that match that. So I've got a month to date, 2 years, top 25 brands. Not quite what I'm looking for. I've got a year to date, 2 years, top 25 brands. And then a couple other ones down here for some bigger time frames, so 3 years and 10 years. I know I'm looking for a year to date, 2 years for top 10 brands. So this is pretty close. I don't quite need top 25 brands, but we can make some changes to scale that down a little bit. So I'm actually going to use this report, and then we're going to make the edits that my manager wanted to get the report that she's looking for. So I'm going to click on it and open it up here. And this is what it gives me. I could be completely done with this report right now and it's giving me data, right? I'm seeing a complete report. It's not quite what I'm looking for, so we're going to make those edits. But you can click on any report in the report library and get data right away. So what we have here, we do already have a visual on here. This isn't quite the one I want to use today, but it does have a visual. We've got a brand column, which was one of our requirements. We've got a dollar volume column, which was one of our requirements. I also see that there's a comparison here already. So comparing this year to last year, which was another one of our requirements. But there's some stuff missing here, right? If I go back and look at our request here, she wants to see our brands ranked, which isn't on there right now. She wants it only for our Walmart chains, and right now we're seeing everything. I'm also not seeing the package on there for each of those brands. And I'm missing that case total. So there's a few things we need to add here. And my suggestion when you're coming into these existing reports and making those changes is to start from the top on the left-hand side and move your way down. So I'm going to start in the layout tab here. And these are going to be our group bys, our values, and our columns. And they're named a little bit differently here. So our groupings are going to be, again, our group bys. Metrics are those values. And then the comparison down here at the bottom is our columns. That's what's happening in the background. I see the brand here in my grouping, which is where this column is coming from. My dollar volume metric, which is where these two columns are coming from. And then my comparison year, which is why I have the 2023 and 2024. All right, so I know that she also wants to see package in here. And I already got my brand, so I need to add another group by. I have a button here that says add group by. And when I click on that, I get a list of different fields that I can choose to add here. And before we add one, I want to show you where this list comes from. So I'm going to click on the Fusion Edit button down here at the bottom. And we're going to jump into the Fusion Edit screen. Now, this is a really big report, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but I do want to show you where that list comes from. So on the left-hand side here, here's our group bys, and I can see that brand that's already displaying in our parent section. And at the bottom here in this additional group by section, there's a really long list of different table fields here. And that's where that list is coming from that I can add. So the additional group bys is what gives me the ability to add additional fields from the Fusion Edit or view screen itself. So let's jump back in here. I'm going to create the report again. We'll jump back into our layout tab. I'm going to click that add group by button. And I know I'm looking for package. So I can scroll through the list here, or I have the handy search bar at the top that I can just search for what I'm looking for. And if I type in package, here's my package option here. And if I click on it and run the report, I should see a new column for package as well. So now I have a brand column and a package column, but I noticed something here that my brands on the left-hand side look to be repeating quite a bit. I've got a few repeated brands here, a few repeated brands here. And this should be a red flag to you anytime you're creating a report when you see repeating data that you need to reorganize your groupings. What I mean by that is when there's something repeating, it needs to be in the higher grouping. So brand is the one that's repeating. We'll leave it up here in the top. But my package, I can drag down to this subgroup section here. And when I run my report, it's going to group the packages underneath each brand that roll up into that brand. So I can see all of the packages here that roll up into this brand. And the same thing happened for the rest of my brands here as well. So all of the packages that fall under that brand now are grouped underneath them. Makes it a little bit cleaner. Okay. The other nice thing I get with this by having those groupings is I get an additional total. So before, I was just getting lines and lines of data without really any information. So here now I'm seeing each package total and the overall brand total. So it gives me a little bit more information. Okay, so we've added that package in there. The next thing we're missing is that case total. This report already had the dollar volume total on there, so we don't have to add that, but we do need to add a cases total. So back on our report here, this next section down, the metrics section, is going to have kind of the same functionality. So I have this add metrics button here with a list of options. And this is going to look pretty similar to the additional group bys we saw from our group bys list. So I'm going to jump into the edit screen to show you where that comes from. And this time over on the right-hand side in the value section is where we're getting that list. So here's my dollar volume that I was already seeing on the report. And then at the bottom in this additional values, this is the list that I'm seeing available for me to pick from the report view screen. So everything in this list here, I can choose to pull into the report. I do see a cases one here, so it's already available to me. So we can jump back into the report. I'm going to open up that layout tab again. I'll click on add metrics. And I can see my cases right here at the top, but I could search for it as well. So I'll click on cases. I'll click red report. And now I should actually see two additional columns. So I'm seeing my dollar volume that I saw before, and now I'm getting another grouping over here on the right for cases. So I'm still getting that year-to-date comparison for 2024 to 2023. So I now have both of my values. I have dollar volume and I have cases. The last section on here, the comparison, is what is giving me the ability to see 2023 and 2024, the year comparison here. That's exactly what my manager wanted to see. So I don't need to change this, but if I had other options available to me here, I could change that if I had additional columns. This report doesn't have those available, so I don't need to worry about it. But if there was additional options in here for me, I could switch that column to show me a different comparison. But year is what I need, so we're going to leave that alone. Okay. The next tab on our report is the filters tab. So let's take a look in here of what we need to filter. So I know that we need to filter to our Walmart chains because we only want to report on our Walmart chains. And that looks like the only really filter I need in here. Let's jump back into our report. We're going to go to the filters tab. And I can see a couple that are already applied here. So let's take a look at those. The first one in this time period section is showing me year to date, which is exactly what my manager was looking for. So I can leave this one alone. But I do have other options in here. These don't have to be in a list that I make available. These are just part of that period filter functionality that Fusion has. So these are kind of like a pre-built list of periods that you can choose from. But we're going to leave ours as year to date. Okay. Filters, the next section down, I've got a couple applied here. And these are just some basic default sales filters that we put on pretty much every sales report in Encompass. And that first one is the include in sales report by default. This is related to products. So this is excluding things like empty keg shelves or invoice charges or things that aren't really real products, right? We don't want to report on something that's not a real product. The next one is customer account type equals sale. Kind of doing something similar. We're excluding out customers like your transfer customers or your inventory adjustment customers that aren't true sales. So these are just some basic sales filters here. But I have, just like in the layout tab, another button here that I can add additional filters. Same kind of functionality. I get that list of filters available to me, but these work a little bit differently than my groupings, and my values. So let's jump into the edit screen here, and I want to show you where that list comes from. I'm going to scroll to the very bottom of the screen, and I see my filters section here, and there are a ton of filters in this report. Not all of these are available to me on that screen, though. What makes the filters available to me is this column for pin here. If this column is checked off, that filter is available for me to choose from the report view screen. If it's not checked off, I can only edit that filter from this screen here. Okay, so if I jump back into our report here, we'll go back into the filters tab, and I'll click my add more filters button. Here's all of those pinned filters that we saw. Okay, same thing, I can still search up here. And I know that I'm filtering to a chain, my Walmart chain. So if I search for chain here, I have a chain. And it's going to give me a box to search for what I want to filter to. And I'm searching for my Walmarts in Colorado is the ones that I want to filter to. And if I run my report, it's going to bring my report down to just sales from my Walmart chain now. So we're getting a little bit closer to our goal. So we've added that Walmart chain filter here. We're already looking at year to date. We've added that package group by. We have our values of case total and dollar volume total. Already have that year-to-date comparison, which is great. The things that we have left are adding a visual to our report. We do already have one, but I want to show you a different one today. Adding a rank to our report. And we're still seeing top 25 brands instead of top 10. We have a few more things to add here. So with moving down the line on the left-hand side, we're going to go into the graphs tab now. And we have a bar chart on here already, and this is fine. It's a little bit hard for me to kind of understand what's going on with all of these brands on here and the year-to-date comparison. It's not the cleanest look, but I do have a lot of settings in here that I could change if I wanted to change the colors of the graph or the max and min values of the graphs. I can change those here. At the top where I have this bar chart selected, if I click this drop down, I can see all of my different options in here. And there's a good list of them. Some of these need a specific data type pulled into your report to work. So for example, the area map needs to have like a county, or I believe city works as well, something geographical for that graph to actually work. Or the bubble map, same kind of thing. Some of them you need specific data in the report for them to actually do anything. But the one I want to show you today is our number card. This one's pretty cool. It's newer. Probably in the last year we've added this one, but you get this really nice little card at the top here that shows your overall totals to you in like a really easy to read way. I can drag and drop this card here to kind of match the width of my report as well. And what I'm seeing now is a dollar volume total for each year and a cases total for each year. I have the ability to kind of change how this is displaying though. So right now, if I go down to my settings here, I've got my graph data section. And the first one here is the series type. And right now rows is selected. So I'm seeing, this is what's showing me the dollar volume in cases. I can actually switch this to columns instead. And I see brands instead of the values. So instead, I'm seeing the overall value totals for each of the brands instead. So it kind of depends on what you want to see on that number card there, but you can switch back and forth. I can also set goals here if I have like a sales goal that I want them all to hit, say like 200,000. I can set a goal on them, and then I get these really nice lines here to show me where we're at with that goal. Then I have some other settings down here to set the priority of the goal, if I want it to be above or below that total, and if I want to compare values as well. So the compare is going to show me a nice little, it's kind of hard to see, it's a little small there, but my comparison to last year. So I can see this first brand here is down 4.43% from last year, whereas this one is up 5.5%. So it gives me a nice little comparison in there. And then at the bottom, this one doesn't do too much for our number card, but if you're using something like a bar graph or a line graph, you can change the theme of those reports, or excuse me, the graphs. So you can change the colors on them. You can even create your own if you really wanted to pick some different colors. They don't do too much in the number card here, so we're going to leave it as is. Okay. Our next tab on the left here is our comments tab. This one we actually haven't talked about quite yet. This one's pretty cool. It's fairly new in the last probably year-ish as well. This is going to be really similar to what you see in like Excel or Google Sheets, where you can add comments to different parts of your report. So let's say I'm looking down at my report here and I see kind of a big decrease in our dollar volume for this specific package. If I click on this cell here, the very first option I have is to add a comment. And that's going to give me a text box to say something about the specific cell. So maybe I want to look into this later and I can say, check out why this has gone down. When I click save, it's going to add a little blue dot to this cell here. And when I come back to this report, it's going to stay. So let's say I click out of my comments tab here. If I click on this cell, actually, let's go back to the comments tab. I can see what all of the comments are on my report, and I can even add additional comments here. So if I'm going to say, looks like we don't sell this package anymore or something, I can add additional comments here that just kind of do like a conversation of different comments about the specific cell. This is nice if you and a bunch of your coworkers share the same report. You could add different comments here to talk about something specific. All right, we're going to move into our last tab on the left here, the settings tab. And this one we'll probably spend the most time in because there's so many options here. The first one at the top is the column totals option. This is what's showing us these two additional columns that we're seeing in each of our values. So we have a volume, a dollar volume unit difference, a dollar volume percentage difference, a cases unit difference, and a cases percentage difference. Those are coming from these column totals. So I can see the percent diff and the unit diff selected here. You can add and remove these however you want. Again, you get a list of different options here. This isn't something that has to be added in that report edit screen for you to pick from. These are just default. You can't really change or add any column totals to a report to have available in this list. You just kind of have what's available. One thing I do know is that we're looking for one additional thing in our report. We're looking for this rank. And that does come from these column totals. So I can see at the very bottom of this list here, I have this rank option. So I'm going to check that off and run my report again. And what I should see is each of my brands and my packages ranked by the highest selling. So I can see this brand at the top here is ranked number 1 because they have the highest sales. And then it rolls down into the packages as well. So I can see this specific package of the brand is the highest selling package. It's ranked number 1. Okay, I can have as many column totals as I want. So I can keep those ones that were on there. I could remove them if I wanted to. I could pick something different on here, like if I wanted to see a running sum, or if I wanted to see a percent of total, I can change the calculations that I see here. Okay. The next one down here is our total display. We don't have one showing on the report right now, but this is just going to be a grand total. So if I wanted a grand total for all of the brands for our Walmart chains, I could choose to display it at either the top of the report or the bottom of the report. I'll just choose the top so we can see what that looks like. And now I have this extra bar, extra row at the top here that's going to show me a grand total for everything on the report. So I can see the overall dollar volume from last year, overall from this year, and same thing for cases. I do also get that calculation in those column totals, which is nice. So I can see the overall difference in dollar volume and the overall percent diff. So nice that it rolls up into those column totals too. Our next one here, this details display order. I don't think this one's super commonly used. It can be a little bit confusing, but I'll show you what it does. Essentially what this does is it will flip the way that your group buys are displayed. So if I go into our layout tab, right now we have this displayed as brand over package. So our brand is on top and our packages are underneath. I can flip those. So instead of displaying it as parent-child detail, I could do it in the opposite order, and it's going to flip that grouping. So instead, I have the package at the top and the brand at the bottom. It can be a little hard to read unless you know that's what's happening, but you have that option if you like that display better. Our next one is the column heading. This is just going to change what displays in this very top row here. So right now we're displaying our value, which is these dollar volume in cases, and the column or period, which is the 2023 and 2024. We're seeing that year period. I can change what displays there if I don't want both of those. Maybe I just want to see the value. If I run this, it will take away that year for me. This isn't super helpful because I can't tell what the difference is between these columns. So I probably wouldn't do this in this case, but I have some other options here. Like if I only want to display, say, like the report name, it tells me not a whole lot about these columns, but you can change what gets displayed at the top there. It makes the most sense for me in this case to keep the value in the column total there, the period, so that I can tell what's actually going on in the report. But you do have the option to change those. These next two here kind of go hand in hand together. The group by display is what we are seeing with our kind of split between dollar volume and cases here. So we can see that our dollar volume 2023 and dollar volume 2024, and then our cases are grouped together in their own kind of little columns here, right? I can go back to, if you've been in Fusion before, this hasn't been around super long. This is still kind of newish. It used to be all kind of mashed together into one report, if you remember. I can go back to that view by switching to our columns here. And it's going to mush them kind of all together. So now, instead of having my values split out, I have them all in one row. So I've got dollar volume 2023 and cases 2023 right next to each other. And then I've got dollar volume and cases 2024 right next to each other. So it just kind of depends how you want to see that data. If you like having the year together instead of the value itself, you can go back and forth. I also have the option to split multiple periods. So let's set this to true. And then I'm going to change my values back here. Okay. So really what this is going to do is just split out if you have multiple periods. So if I'm looking at year to date and month to date, it would split out those periods. I'm only looking at one here, so it's not going to do a whole lot. But if you have multiple periods that you're looking at in your report, you can split those here. I like the way that our years are compared here by the value, so I'm going to keep them split this way. And then our next option down is the format option. This one is going to tell Encompass how you want to view this report when you first open it. By default, we have it set to this browser HTML, which is it's exactly what we're looking at, right? You're in the browser, you're viewing the report. But you have some other options here. If I set this to Excel, when I click on this report to view it, it would automatically download an Excel file instead of showing me the report here in the browser. Same thing with our other options like the CSV file or a PDF. If it's set to one of these other formats, it'll download that file of the report for me, still with that data exactly as I would see it in the browser. But instead of showing it to me here, it's just going to download it for me. Now, this next one was a highly requested feature that has been recently added. You'll notice that recently when we changed Fusion's view a little bit with this new sidebar and some of the additional grouping, or excuse me, visual options, we changed it so that this first row here is the only one that's expanded to show you all of the group bys. So what I mean is the rest of the options on here are all collapsed, and I can open them one by one to see what's under them. We've added this setting here so that you can choose how those get collapsed. So by default, it'll be set to that first row expanded. I could choose to collapse all of them. So when I open the report, they'll all be collapsed. Or I can keep all of them expanded. So this came up a lot with creating like dashboards that the reports weren't showing everything. So now you can choose to have these all expanded when you run the report, so you don't have to worry about that on things like dashboards. Really nice. All right. Our next one down here, show top record count. We have it set to 25. And I'm going to take this out of here so you can see kind of what's happening. We have a box for parent, child, and detail. And what that's doing is giving us the top 25 brands. So 25 was in here. This report was a top 25 brands. And if I go to my layout tab, my brand is in the parent and my package is in the child. That's what these little subgroups are. So parent, child, detail. I've got a parent child detail box. So because brand is in the parent, I'm limiting the number of brands that come into the report to 25. Okay. I know that my manager only wants to see the top 10. So I'm going to change this from 25 to 10. Run the report. And now I should be limited to only 10 brands here. So I'm saying the top 10 brands that our Walmarts are buying. Okay. I'm still seeing all of the packages underneath here, so I didn't limit the packages. I could, if I only want to see, say, like the top 5 packages of each brand, I could come into the child box here because our package is in the child, limit it to 5. And now I should only see 10 brands and 5 packages for each brand. So each one has up to 5. Okay. All right. Our next one here is the theme. This one's pretty fun. You can change the colors of the report. You do have a way to create these if you want to create your own theme for your company, or if you just like specific colors. We're not going to go through how to do that today. There is a help resource out there if you want to know how. But we have some built in here that you can choose from. So there's things like if you want all green, there's one called fresh green that you can change it to. There's one called icy that I like, nice and bright blue. Lots of different options in there for you to choose from if there's something that you want to pick, or if you want to create one to set the theme there. And then here's those print settings that we saw earlier. So does exactly what you would think it do. It prints the report, but you have some settings here. So I can add some grid lines in there to put the grid lines in between the data. Page breaks are really nice. So what this does is cuts off the page at your grouping. So I don't know if you'll be able to see it here. We're gonna try it. Can you see my print preview, Lori?
Yes, we can see it.
Lovely. Okay, it's gonna be really small. But what's happening right now is it's kind of just printing the report the exact way that I'm seeing it in the browser, right? What I can do instead is add page breaks in here, and it's going to give me a page for each brand. So if I click print, I should see 10 pages because there are 10 brands that are being displayed, and I have 10, and each brand is going to be on its own page. This comes in really handy if you're doing something like a sales rep report where you want to print off your sales reps data and put each sales rep on their own page. You can give it to them. That's really nice to add those page breaks in there. Or you can just print it all as one long report like we saw.
Now, Jazzy, we did have a question that came through the chat.
Yeah.
Can you set volume goals by sales route? So they want to see that using the number card. Is that something that we can do?
Absolutely. So not necessarily with this report since we're not looking at routes, but once you have your report created where you're seeing your sales by route, absolutely. So you'd come into the graph here, you'd set your goal. So whatever your sales goal is for that route, depending on how long you're looking at it, if you want like $10,000 for each route, right? You'll set your goal priority. So probably for a route, you'd want it to be above that goal, not below. You'd keep that as above. Compare depends if you want to like compare to last year or whatever you want to do, but it would look something like this. So you'd have that little line for what the goal is. You would see the route here instead of brand, and probably dollar volume or whatever it is that you're looking at as the goal. And then you would see their current total and then the goal here. So yeah, you absolutely can.
Great. Thanks, Jazzy.
Yeah. All right. I do want to touch on a couple of the buttons here at the top since we have a couple of minutes. If you've never used the calculator before, you're in for a treat today. So this little calculator icon at the top, it works just like a normal calculator if you want it to with this manual button. I can just use it as a normal calculator. That's not what makes it cool though. What I can do with the calculator is I can actually select cells in my report and they do some math for me. So I picked all of the package dollar volumes here for this brand and it's giving me a total, okay? I can also copy values. So let's say instead I want to pick a few of my brands here, and this one, this one, and this one. I can copy those, come into say like the brands table because I copied the brands. I'll paste those in the brand column, and now I can filter. So I've selected them from my report, and now I can filter to them here. Pretty handy. So a few things you can do with the calculator there, which is really nice. I'm not going to run this today because it takes a minute and we don't have a ton of time, but there's this really nice new Get Insights button at the top that does kind of like an AI analysis on your report, which is really cool. It'll look at all of the data in the report and kind of give you like a summary of what's going on there. So like what's driving your sales, what's dropping your sales. It'll analyze kind of what's going on there. So I highly recommend you go try this button. Like I said, it takes a minute, so I'm not going to run it today just for the sake of time, but go check it out. All right. I'm going to jump into our Fusion edit screen here really quickly before we wrap up and save some time for questions. And just retouch on some of those things we looked at. So those lists that we get available to us to pick from on that screen come from our additional group buys, our additional values, and then at the very bottom, all of these pinned filters, right? So if you're missing something that's not in that list, and you need to add it to your report, come to these sections here and see if you can add them. The caveat is that that table where the field comes from that you want to filter on or add to the report does already have to be joined into the report here. So this report here has a ton of different tables. So if it's already here, I can easily add it. So let's say I want to add an additional group by here for customer address. We'll try that. So I've got this customer shipping address. The table's already joined in here. I can search for the one I'm wanting and add it. Now this field's going to be available for me on the report. It's pretty easy to add them if that table's already there. I should be able to find shipping address in this list now. It took me about 2 seconds to add that. The problem comes in if that table isn't already there. Recommend that you come to Fusion 1 to learn how to add those because it's a little more complicated than I can show you today. But if it's there, super easy to add them. Same concept in additional values and with your filters, just make sure you're pinning those when you add them so that they show up in the report. Questions?
I haven't seen any more come through the chat. So I'm going to start my wrap up spiel, but know that I'm going to talk kind of slowly and give anybody typing plenty of time to enter that. I want to start off by thanking you, Jocelyn, for delivering this session to us today and to all of the attendees who were able to make it. Thank you so much for your time. We hope it was helpful and valuable. Getting the ability to create reports and the ability to create scalable reports, I think, are some of the main enhancements that we're really focusing on here. Is that, this is what gets your foot in the door in so many cases. But if you're an experienced report builder, making sure that you can send those out to people and they are also empowered to make the data meaningful to them. So doing things like pinning those filters and like knowing what kind of things people are looking for are essential habits that we can build into the process. And it looks like my little tap dancing around has yielded a couple of questions. Keep typing those in, guys. First question: how come my report total is different versus my already created report I have in saved reports? Jason, I actually wonder if that's a better support question. Without the ability to see that kind of report as to why it's different, it usually comes down to tables and fields or filters.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree, Jazzy?
Yeah, it's a little hard without looking at those two reports, Jason. Support would be a great resource to take a look at both of those and see what's causing that difference, because it can come down to something super simple like another option picked in the filter, or maybe you have a different calculation going on. A little hard to know without seeing both of those reports, though.
It could be something also like the base table, an inner versus a left join, and how it's like
Sure.
pulling data together. So those are some of the most common places that like you can take a look at. And if you're not able to find it, I would submit that question with both reports to the support team.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Oh, actually follow up. How do I make sure it's set to system close date? Um, do you want to
Think
show
we're
that?
talking to, yeah, I think we're talking about like date filters. So if I'm in my report here, at the bottom where my filters are, we're going to split out date filters and normal table field filters. Dates are always going to be at the top. So this is just a period filter here. And to the right, I have a close day option. This is going to look really similar to how it does in comparison if you've used this before. Right now, this is set to today, meaning that I'm seeing kind of all sales, whether they're verified or not, all the way up to today. If I want it to be only verified sales set to system close, I would just set that to system close here. And that's going to match the last day that we ran end of day in our system. So this one should be up to date, I would hope. um, but last time end of day was run was 11/12. We're a little bit behind in this site here. So it would see today as 11/12 because I've set it to system close. That can only be done on this report edit screen, just an FYI. So just because I can edit the period here from the report view screen, I do have to come edit that close date in the edit screen itself.
So just, I guess, keep in mind in that case that you would have to have the Fusion Edit permission in order to be able to make that
Correct.
modification. This isn't one of those things that you'd be able to edit from the side panel view or allow other users you're sharing this report out to who don't have Fusion Edit would not be able to access that.
Yeah, that's a great call out, Lori. So if you're sharing this report with, say, like your sales reps who don't have Fusion Edit, they won't be able to come into this screen and do any edits here. So make sure you're making things available to them that they're going to need before you're sharing that out. Or if you're sending this to a supplier or a customer, whoever's going to be viewing it, they're not going to have that Fusion Edit permission to come in here and see all of this and make changes. So they'll only see what's available to them in the additional group buys or what's pinned. They won't be able to make these kind of underlying edits.
All right. There are two questions left. I'm going
Okay.
to bring one of them up. I'm not sure if we'll have time to answer it in these final minutes, and then I'll circle back to the
Okay.
other one if we don't. The next question is, for a gross margin calculation report, is it possible to bring in FIFO costs as well in cases we sell product before costs are generated in purchases? So for a gross margin calculation report, is it possible to bring in FIFO costs?
I would assume yes. I don't have the answer for you off the top of my head. I'd recommend going into that report library to see what's available there. And if it's not something that's already created, it'd be a really good support question to see if there's like a filter or um, a value you can change or calculation you can change to get the data that you're looking for. Um, I think that might take us a little longer than a couple of minutes here to talk about, though. So I'd recommend taking a look in the report library and reaching out to support if you're not able to find the exact report that you're looking for.
All right. And because we do have 1 minute left,
Let's
I'm
do
gonna
it.
ask last question, but I do think that
Okay.
it's kind of like iceberg one. I know we won't be able to show it. Um, the next question is, how about setting dollar volume minus deposits for sales reports? It's something that's really easily done in comparison. Um,
Yeah.
how do we do that here?
It's a really great question. So this kind of dips into a little bit of our Fusion 1, Fusion 2 concepts, but it's actually really simple now. So if you have the Fusion edit permission and you click on this little FX here on any value field, you'll get this little pop out. There's a list on the left-hand side here of saved expressions, and dollar volume minus deposit is one of them. So all I have to do is click on it. It puts the calculation in there for me. I hit done. The one caveat, and again, this goes into some concepts that I don't have time to talk about today, but if there's an aggregate like sum in the expression, you need to change this drop down to nothing. And now I have dollar volume minus deposit in my report. So use that little saved expressions, super handy, but you have to know how to kind of get into that expression box there. That's
If you've
all.
been
Super
with
simple.
Encompass for a hot minute, you might remember the expression library, and we've just
Yes.
pulled that right into actual Fusion. So if you had ever used that library before or knew that it existed, she is now in Fusion Edit. It is a beautiful thing. No more copy and paste, just click and done. So, all right. I think that is all the time we have for questions. We've gone 1 minute past the hour. Have any other follow-ups, please don't hesitate to submit them to our team here at the email address is beved, BEVED, at encompass8.com. And Jossie and I'll be able to take a look at those. Thank you again, everyone, for attending. We are going to go ahead and post a survey at the end of this session. If you have any suggestions for future content that you'd like us to go over, we are deep in planning mode for 2025. So this is a great time to get those submitted. Thanks again, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.